Infinity Nation and beyond, we look at the status of your digital landscape and how it affects the growth and profitability of your business. On the show, we will be talking to business leads, partners in the e-commerce world, as well as some of our own specialist team to give you actionable insights and find solutions to help you on your growth journey today. We will consider new ideas, stretch our mindsets beyond the status quo, and in the process discover how to gain an edge on the competition and drive some great results.
Hi, welcome to the Infinity Nation and Beyond podcast. Today we have with us Rob Beattie from Klarna. We're going to delve into the world of buy now and pay later and how it will harness and gain you the best results in your ACR growth model, acquisition, conversion, retention. And we're also going to look at the morality of these solutions, pros and cons. Welcome, Rob. How are you today?
Thanks, Al. Yeah, all good. All good. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Thanks for coming. Before we begin, can you tell us a little bit more about Klarna for those that may not have heard of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess worth introducing myself as well. So I'm one of the partner managers here at Klarna in the UK. So in terms of my sort of day-to-day role here, managing quite a broad range of partners across agencies and SIs, platforms, PSPs, in-store solutions, etc. And in terms of Klarna itself, so founded in Sweden in 2005, I guess with the aim of making it easier for people to shop online, and ultimately our mission is to make paying as simple, safe, and above all as smooth as possible. We're the leading provider of buy now, pay later services globally, so providing smarter and more flexible shopping and purchase experiences to over 90 million shoppers globally now, and that's through over 250,000 retailers and brands. We're live and available in 17 core markets across 3 continents, and that's via direct payments, pay after delivery options, and installments plans.
Some staggering numbers for a company that's 15, 16 years old. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, it's going like that as well.
So I mean, an impressive solution, and I think, yeah, as you say, it's just phenomenal growth. So with that in mind, there's been a phenomenal change in the last couple of years, really, for these solutions to come to the fore. So with just such fast change in the sector, what kind of impact has sort of buy now, pay later had on sort of key e-commerce metrics that you've seen?
Yeah, I think firstly, it's worth pointing out that this sort of, this model has been around and available for years. If you look at markets such as Germany, for example, that sort of invoicing model has long been the preferred way to pay, I guess. Here in the UK specifically, and I guess other markets as well, we've maybe just been a bit later to adopt this sort of this way to pay. But yeah, I think in the UK, as you say, over the last sort of 2 to 3 years, demand and growth has been huge, and I think firstly that's largely driven by consumer demand and ultimately the fact that consumers want more flexible ways to pay, and that's without getting hit with sky high interest rates that you might get from credit cards or more traditional sort of revolving credit offerings. We're seeing a huge shift away from credit cards. So something like a 50% drop in credit card spending during the pandemic. 50% of millennials now don't have credit cards, and there's been, I think, a 5x growth in debit card volume compared to credit cards in the last decade. So there's been this huge shift over the last few years, and I guess what you get with buy now, pay later, a lot of the benefits of credit, but using debit, so you can spread the cost of an order over time, try before you buy, and I guess there's the added layer of a sort of trust and security from a consumer's perspective as well. In terms of growth, yeah, I guess there's no doubt really that the huge shift in e-commerce that with everything that's happened over the last couple of years has accelerated adoption. interestingly, we're seeing a slightly older demographic that you might expect to have been adopting buy now, pay later. So in terms of our spend data over the last couple of years, it's the 45 to 54-year-old age group that's been the fastest growing, and 55 plus after that. And then in terms of the impact of implementing buy now, pay later, it really spans full funnel from acquisition to conversion, retention, and loyalty.
Yeah.
So if we look at the acquisition piece as a starting point, retailers and brands, there's a huge opportunity for them to showcase their brand to a large core cohort of really loyal consumers and shoppers. If you look at the UK alone, Klarna has roughly 15 million consumers. So there's a great opportunity here to drive traffic to the retailer sites through things like our app. App alone has had about 5 million downloads in the UK, 40 million downloads globally. You've got our shop directory, which is where if the merchant chooses, they can be sort of they can be featured there. Our social media channels, which have huge followings, and then as I say, I think in terms of the acquisition piece, there's a huge opportunity for retailers and brands to sort of to acquire, and we know how much that costs at the moment.
Do you have any tangible examples of that you can share?
Yeah. Cox & Cox is a brand that I reference all the time. So they implemented Klarna, I think it was around maybe April of last year, something like that. And within the first few months of go live, they saw that roughly 50% of those checking out with Klarna were new customers to Cox & Cox. And they really went to town on things like promoting Klarna in direct mail, so their direct mail catalogs, any advertising they do with the likes of the Times or the Telegraph. Klarna will always be, the Klarna logo will always be displayed there. Any sort of display advertising they do, again, they'll be referencing Klarna there. So at any point in the shopping journey, that's where they'll be positioning Klarna, and I guess that's where the sort of the conversion side of things comes into play, right? So
how long
look at conversion,
you'll see yourselves? Sorry, I was just going to say, how long do you think you'll see until you see yourselves on a TV advert like a Trustpilot for a while? People started to reference them in their DM pieces and things. Will there be a Klarna logo on a TV advert? If it hasn't,
we're already seeing that. I'm pretty sure that has already happened. And specifically on the Trustpilot side of things, Klarna as a brand has a really high sort of rating itself. So I think that is already starting to happen, and we'll probably see more of that.
As you say, it's almost like adding signals or these buying signs to new customers. And it'd be interesting on the Cox & Cox example, and you probably won't know it, was how much of that DM work that went on was to prospecting, like a cold list versus existing customers, and reiterating that you were using Klarna to them. So I think there's so many facets. You say, and people. I think I was going to say, I think people often just focus so much on let's drive traffic to the website, but aren't really considering what are the key consideration points whilst going through the purchase journey that could make someone drop out or falter. So if you go back to
absolutely,
the 1% gain.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not. It's not uncommon to see a 10% plus increase in conversion in having implemented Klarna. So here it's really about promoting and positioning Klarna as high up the funnel as possible. So the sooner the consumer sees the pink logo and understands that they can check out with Klarna, ultimately they are more likely to add to basket. They're more likely to add more to basket and subsequently convert. And it's actually really easy to do as well. So we have an on-site messaging widget, for example, that has sort of pre-built integrations into many of the most sort of common platforms that you'd expect, and that'll do things like break down the cost of installments on PDP. It'll pull in FAQs, links to T's and C's, all that sort of stuff. So we've made it really easy for the the retailers and brands to really position and make the most of positioning Klarna on site, and ultimately the more they can do to reduce friction from the buying journey, the better. And then, as I mentioned as well, will impact retention and loyalty as well. So from a retention perspective, I guess here it's all about building trust and driving loyalty with experiences that really going to add value to the online or even in-store experience. And then from a loyalty perspective, we know that shoppers who use buy now pay later, certainly Klarna, have roughly a 45% higher purchase frequency. So if they're engaged in the right way, there's a very good chance they're going to be repeat customers.
And did you also say to me typically that customers, where they're using buy now pay later, are also spending a little bit more in terms of average order value?
Yeah, absolutely. It's especially, well, I mean, we've got a couple of different payment methods. So we've got pay later in 30 days. So that's where the consumer has an option to or the opportunity to place an order today, and then they've got 30 days to ultimately pay for what they want to keep. So really well suited to fashion and that sort of try before you buy model, where consumer might want to touch and feel the product before knowing what they want to spend, and without having to wait 2 or 3 weeks for a refund potentially. So there's that side of things which always has an uplift in terms of conversion and AOV. But Pay in 3, which is our most popular product in the UK, that really drives more in terms of that uplift in AOV. On average it's more than 40%. And the reason here is it's a more considered purchase, and it really is that sort of I guess sort of upgrade play. So you might land on site thinking, I've got £100 to spend on a pair of trainers, but actually why not spend 150 or add a few extra items to basket and spread the cost of that over 3 months without paying any interest. Homeware, for example, would be one of our most popular verticals. Referenced Cox and Cox is a good example there. So there's huge benefits in terms of that uplift in sales and AOV.
And one thing that intrigued my interest just now, you were saying one of the fastest growing segments were the 45 to 54-year-olds, and then the 55 pluses. I understand the sort of the millennials and the younger generation seeing the benefits or being more akin to using this type of solution, as you said, with them less using credit cards, using more of these sort of breakthrough banks and the Monzos and of the likes. How do you build trust for this sort of 45, 54 and 55 plus category? It isn't a solution that I imagine that many of them may have heard about historically. So I appreciate they've been around for a while, but how do you as a platform sort of build that trust or to see this growth in these age demographics?
Yeah, I guess a lot of different ways. I mean, I sort of alluded to the fact that that the pandemic has really accelerated e-commerce and there's been a huge shift in people shopping online. A lot of those probably hadn't shopped before, and now they're landing on all these retailer sites and seeing the Klarna logo and I guess almost looking at that badge in itself as a bit of a sort of security blanket, if you like, especially for smaller retailers maybe where they don't know or trust the brand. So there's that side of things. Something I guess not many people know is we're a fully licensed bank. So as a business, we're used to operating in a heavy regulated environment and I guess uphold extremely high operating standards across all of our products and services. Here in the UK, for example, we work very closely with various sort of government bodies, so the likes of the Advertising Standards Authority, for example. So ensuring there that we're following best practices and sort of standards in authority, and assuring that we're following best practice and guidelines here. So making sure that the retailers are very clear in how Klarna is positioned, ensuring that terms are clearly displayed, 18 plus only. really making sure that, from a consumer's perspective, what you see is what you get. So there's that side of things, and then we're very proactive in terms of sort of financial wellness and that side of things from a consumer facing perspective. So for example, there's a section of our site that's dedicated to this. Highly recommend anyone listening to take a look at that. And then in terms of sort of responsible lending and that side of things, we only lend if we believe the consumer can comfortably afford to make the payment. So we conduct strict eligibility checks on each and every transaction. So it's not an open line of credit, and we're constantly assessing our sort of lending criteria. So very different to how credit cards operate, for example, where you might make that sort of first time application. You're approved with X amount of credit, and then it's yours to play with. And often that's where people get caught up. Whereas with Pay in 3, for example, the cost of that order is going to be paid after those 3 payments, and it's interest free. So there's that side of things, and then I guess from a merchant's perspective, we take on the fraud and default risk. So there's the added benefit to the retailer from that perspective, and then for the consumer, we offer them buyer protection. So they have the comfort of knowing that if anything goes wrong, we're there to support, really. So yeah, a lot of different ways. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think especially the fraud one for the retailer must be also quite comforting, because historically,
yep.
I've definitely been stung on a few transactions where people would put credit card things through and have it delivered, and suddenly you get a phone call a month later going, well, why have you charged me this on our credit card? And you're like, well, it was the order that was placed, so it's not us, and it wasn't delivered to that address, and whoever had placed that order has now walked around in some nice outdoor clothing or camping out in a nice tent. So that I think from a retailer's point of view, that's quite, because I suppose you physically
huge advantage.
Yeah, prove that they're a physical person with a real address, and interesting. I suppose
So we'll act as the go-between, really. Act as the go-between between the consumer and the retailer. So often heavily involved in disputes and that side of things. So as you say, just another added benefit, really.
Brilliant. And I suppose if I was sat here as a retailer, there are a plethora of payment platforms now available to me to use, especially places like America. So for the European-based listeners to the podcast, what criteria should they be looking for before making a decision of taking a solution in this space?
I feel like the opportunity to acquire and tap into that sort of consumer network, I'd say, often plays a key role in that decision-making process. So what's the opportunity there? If you're selling internationally, which most retailers do nowadays, then think about the markets that you're selling into, and have a look at what the preferred ways to pay are there. So in the Nordics, for example, 40% of e-commerce transactions go through Klarna, and Klarna really is seen as a badge of sort of security and trust. We did a survey there recently, and it was something like over 50% of shoppers said they haven't shopped with a store because Klarna wasn't available, and then over 50% of those went on to shop somewhere else. So by not offering Klarna, you're literally giving your competition business. And then in Germany, for example, something like 60% of all German checkouts include at least one Klarna payment option. So I think that probably needs to play a key role in terms of the sort of decision making process, and and that side of things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's really valid, isn't it? You say it's all great wanting to roll your e-commerce solution out into wider shores, but understanding the psychology and the preferred payment methods of those countries is a critical factor in being successful. Just doing what you do in the UK, for example, and then say you want to take it to Germany. I know and have witnessed numerous people that have tried that. It just doesn't work. That's not how they want to pay. They don't trust it that way, and that doesn't work for them. So I think, as you say, it's that key. That if you've got a solution that's then breaking down those barriers across multiple borders or different ways of wanting to purchase, it just makes your life as an e-commerce manager or e-com director or business owner much easier.
Yeah, and what we offer in the UK, for example, will be different to what we offer in Germany or France or the Nordics, for example. So our solutions are really tailored and designed to consumer preferences in each of those countries. So it's not one size fits all. And actually, you will see that with a lot of buy now pay later solutions. They might be offering pay in 4 and it's bi-weekly payments, for example, in the UK, but really is that relevant? Where most of the population here are paid monthly, for example. So I think that's something to consider as well.
Rob, what would your advice be to anyone that's looking at diversifying their payment types but hesitant to do so at the moment? And I think, sorry, I'm just going to add to that. There's probably, also we should look at the morality of it, because I know there are people that are concerned about, are we empowering or enabling people to buy things that they can't afford?
Mm-hmm. So on that latter question, I would always ask if they're offering credit card payments at checkout. If so, I think that question is should be thrown out the window, fairly early on. I've touched
just
on a lot of the stuff that we're doing.
God, sorry, I was just going to say, just elaborate.
I think as consumers, why should we have to pay interest, right? There's an opportunity now to spread the cost of a payment, get all the benefits of traditional sort of credit cards and those types of payment methods, but actually without interest rates and that side of things. And I alluded to it before, but as a consumer, if you are spending on credit cards, there's probably a much bigger opportunity to actually get yourselves in a lot of debt and then get caught up in revolving credit cycles, minimum payments every month, if all this sort of stuff. Whereas with Pay in 3, for example, your order is paid after 3 payments, and there's the added benefit of not paying interest. That plus the fact that we're doing affordability checks on every transaction means actually, it's a much more sustainable form of credit, I guess, is an easy way to put it, if that makes sense. And then, as I say, all the work that we're doing in terms of working closely with the Advertising Standards Authority and being heavily involved in the Woolard review, which was the review around these sort of non-regulated and buy now pay later solutions and what that looks like. There's a very proactive approach that we take to all of that sort of stuff. So credit cards and that side of things are very much an old school way of sort of spending. So going back to your question about, if you're hesitant to do so, why not? I mean, I'd say, what have you got to lose? If you're running on a platform such as Shopify, Magento, BigCommerce, WooCommerce, or even PSPs like Savadi and Checkout.com, DNA, etc., it's really easy to integrate. It's a very light touch project from that perspective. We're just coming up to peak. We did a survey recently, and here in the UK, and people are planning on spending more, and earlier. Something like 57% of those that we surveyed said they were increasing budgets anywhere between £100 to £500. So don't miss out on that opportunity to acquire and convert. And added to that, utilize the opportunity to showcase your brand to our network of shoppers. yeah, for me, obviously I'm biased, but it should be a no-brainer. And as I say, it's easy to implement. So why not?
Yeah, I think it's hassle free in the main for a retailer to add it, and if it's going to add a new way of, we all saw the jump when people added maybe a competitor to yours, but Apple Pay, and just how much easier that made a mobile
Yeah.
checkout progress, and the conversion benefits of that. Again, if you've got now a trusted solution and it allows people to obtain the products that they want, but without risk of getting into debt, but spread the payments, then it seems a win-win from my position.
Can you share any insight into? And obviously, you work with with many retailers. Have you seen any implement Klarna or another buy now pay later provider? And have you seen what sort of benefits it can drive yourself?
I've seen benefits of even if it's not a buy now pay later solution, just offering multiple payment types that people that are comfortable to use, and that's seen. I think there's some figures similar to yourself that you quoted earlier. I've seen typically somewhere between 15 and 20% improvement in conversion rate and checkout revenue going up because a different payment type that pocket of consumers were happier to use over and above the typical, Visa, MasterCard, Amex rarely, but and so we're all different people, and I think so. It's just we've got to make sure that we have that ability to service our customers in the way in which they want to be served and they want to buy the product. I think you're just providing choice. I mean, if we go back 20 years, e-commerce didn't really exist, and part of the addition of e-commerce for some retailers, not pure play, was just a different way to service customers. Let them self-serve. They wanted to buy online at a time that was suitable to them. They didn't want to have to phone mail order. They didn't want to have to post an order in, and they also didn't have to go time to go to a different store. It's a similar ethos, in my opinion, that we're just saying, look, if you want to put it on your debit card and pay for it straight off, here's an option. If you've sold some products and you've got some money on account because you've sold some products off, here's a way to do it. If you want to buy these products but you haven't got all the money right now, here's a great way of doing it without having to incur a penalty or an interest cost to do so. So for me, it's
To add to that, it's not necessarily people who can't even afford it. We're talking people who are more than able to afford it, but using or utilizing buy now pay later because it's easy and because it's flexible, and through things like our app, for example. There's a lot more that you can do there. In a way, it's sort of an end-to-end shopping service. I guess so. In the app, for example, things like building out wish lists and price drop alerts. Following your favorite retailers and brands and that side of things. And then in terms of the post-purchase experience, you've got all your orders in one place. You know exactly where you're at in terms of outgoings and that side of things, and your sort of financial spend when it comes to retail. And then things like customer service, returns, all that sort of stuff that you can manage through it as well. So it's not people who can't necessarily afford it, but they're using it more because it's an easy way to pay and shop and save as well. I moved house recently. Whilst I probably could have afforded a lot of what we had to buy, it's like, well, why not spread the cost of these orders over a few months and just make my outgoings a little bit less each month, and it's easier. I think that's the way that retailers and brands probably need to look at it if they do have concerns.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean that people were buying it that way because they couldn't afford it. I meant that they may be cash savvy or cash flow savvy, and so they're just saying, well, as you did. Yeah. I don't want to. I don't need to create a massive spike in money out the door if I can make this more make it a smoother outgoings. Then that there's less less spikes in my cash flow than happy days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that coupled with some people being on furlough pay, it just allowed them to watch the pennies and be a little bit cautious on, I suppose, being savvier at managing their finances.
Yeah, and actually, I think a lot of people over the last couple of years have had an opportunity to save, with not being out as much and everything else that's happened. Actually, there's more disposable income for a large percentage of the population. And I guess that ties into that report I mentioned that it hasn't been published yet, but is soon to come out, and that people are now looking to spend more because they've managed to save over the last couple of years. So there's an opportunity there, I think, for retailers and brands.
Brilliant. And last one for me, what does the future hold? Are there any bits or elements you can let us know that are coming through from Klarna?
What's coming? International expansion is going to be big. So we've got a couple more markets that we'll be launching in Q4 in Europe, and then next year looking a bit further afield. I can't say too much more on that at the moment, but that'll be a big focus for us. We've made some interesting acquisitions over the last few months, so this is all sort of public knowledge, but there's an in-store customer service solution called Hero that we've acquired. So waiting to see sort of how that ties into the overall offering, but it's a really, really nice solution. There's like an influencer marketing platform that we've acquired called Apparel, and also a mobile wallet called Stocard. So in terms of the product and our offering, it's evolving rapidly. All these additional sort of services that ultimately make it better for the consumer. And as I say, it sort of ties into that end-to-end shopping experience. So I think that the app and that side of things is something to keep an eye on over the coming months. Lots of exciting developments and progress there.
Brilliant. Yeah, we've got a couple of clients using Hero, and it is a fantastic solution, and hopefully we can do a separate podcast on that in its own right in it as well. I just think it's a brilliant way, again, of the consumer being able to if they can't leave their home or they haven't got time to get to we were talking about it from a furniture retailer point of view, then they can physically go and own the product. They can be walked around the product, answer questions. It's just another way to engage the customer, building loyalty and a more convenient touch point with your brand. I just think, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really neat. So yeah, really excited to see how that sort of how that ties into the end-to-end proposition.
Fantastic. Where can we learn more about Klarna, Rob?
Website's the obvious starting point, so Klarna.com. If anyone has any queries or they want to dive into more of what we've discussed today, feel free to reach out direct. LinkedIn or happy for you to share my email if needed. But feel free to reach out. More than happy to have a chat. Brilliant.
Well, it's been great chatting to you. Thanks for your time and providing great insight into the world of buy now, pay later. Hopefully we'll catch up soon as and when there's new features come, and we can do another post on those.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll keep in touch. Thanks for having me, Al. Appreciate it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks so much for joining us. If you want to stay in front of what's up next, hit subscribe or please follow Infinity Nation on LinkedIn or Instagram, where we drop upcoming interviews and regular tips and insights. Until next time.